printmakers, waiting to say hi. I am going to show you how to work with our silkscreen today. You can actually see that I have already practiced, and so some of the staining that you see is from the fabric ink itself, but notice the image is really, really clean. So I don't have any ink within the screen itself. It just stains the yellow a little bit. So when you're cleaning it, which I'll show, you'll want to keep that in mind. All right, I have a setup here that is in the classroom, but you'll need to have a partner for this because this device is actually going to hold my screen in place. So I actually just loosen this and clasp this here. Now, you are going to be printing on several different surfaces. So what I've done to prepare my space, and you can do this with newspaper or just any kind of old kind of a towel or something, you want to lay down and have your space kind of protected because this is fabricating and therefore it does get everywhere. So make sure wherever you're printing, you are protected from getting anything on furniture or any kind of fabric of any sort. In addition, I have to wear a smock because I do get things everywhere, and this is fabric ink, and the fabric ink does stain clothing. It's not impossible to get out, but it's pretty hard to get it out. If you do get it on your clothing, just use like a spray, OxyClean, or some kind of stain stick. Let it soak overnight in a bath of water, and then it should clean out. Maybe scrub it a little bit with a brush or something, get it out of the fibers of the clothing. It should wash out. The fabric ink actually, screen printing fabric ink, to set it into clothing, you have to iron it on, which I'll explain at a later point. So, as I was mentioning, you're going to be printing on several different surfaces. So I have paper, multiple colors, including the white that I gave you. I have a piece of old map. I have a piece of a magazine. These are just scrap papers down here to catch my ink. So I have that kind of prepared to start the printing process. I also have my plexiglass, which you can take the plexi cover off. It's either white or blue. You can just peel it off on both sides. I also have a piece of wood. I have a piece of cardboard, and I have a t-shirt. So I have to work pretty quickly so that the ink doesn't dry in my screen. If you start to notice that it's not printing as well, you will have to clean your screen off completely. The wood part is up, the yellow is down. This should read correctly. If you are indeed printing with text, it should now read correctly from there. So I have quite a few layers under here just to create some padding. There's a pushing action with the screen. When you actually are pushing down with your squeegee, you get the action of kind of adhering the ink to the screen. So I'll show you that in just a moment. I have my palette knives here. I also have my 3 ink colors. Remember, don't use the photo emulsion. It's separate. This is your black, your blue, and your red. I also have some orange and some purple here in case I need it. This is a mixing. This is a scoop. So to start with, I'm going to use my orange. And the fluorescent colors are really kind of gloppy. They're kind of thick, but they still work just fine. So if you feel the consistency is a little different for the fluorescence than the other colors, that's okay. It still passes through the screen with no problem. Make sure that your ink is spread the width of your image. All right, and you're going to use quite a bit of ink, especially because I'm going to be printing a lot right now. I want to use quite a bit of ink. And just have it prepared. And then once you start to put the ink through the screen, you have to work pretty rapidly. So you'll see me moving quickly. The angle in which you push, this squeegee is the ones from school, but you also have your squeegee in your kit. They both work the same. Make sure you spread your fingers out. Don't hold it like this. You want to give a lot of pressure down and towards you. All right, that's really important, down and towards you. That pressure allows the screen to adhere to the paper and keeps it even across the entire pull. So I have these being held. If you have a partner holding it with you, just have them hold up here or on the side. So positioned here or here so it doesn't slide on you as you're working. So you'll see I'm going to push down really hard. And it covers the screen like so. I'm going to just use my palette knife to take the ink off and put it onto the screen like so. And I'm just going to do it one more time just to make sure that I've got it. You're going to get a lot of ink. You'll move it around with your palette knife. Have a clean place or somewhere to put that. And then that is my silkscreen. So you can see it came out really nicely. I have a tiny bit of an issue right there, so I'm going to push a little harder on that side. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to do this on another color right now so you can see it, and then I'm going to move on to my other surfaces. You'll want to have everything laid out right away so you don't have a lot of wait time in between because it will dry in the screen and that could ruin your screen. So if something happens, you might just have to wash it out and start once it's dried out. So I'm spreading that ink around on there, setting my palette knife aside, making sure I have clean hands, and I'm ready to push down onto my blue paper. So I just did one push that time just to show you. All right, good print. Now I'm going to print on another surface. Orange isn't going to work. So I'm going to print onto this map, just kind of as a cool different surface. I am going to add this ink. But this time, I'm going to add a little bit more ink of another color. So I'm going to add some purple. This is called a rainbow roll. They'll kind of blend together, which is fun. You can really experiment with the colors and just have fun with it. And so I'm going to spread that purple out there as well. And then I can use the same sprayer, or I can use a different one. I'm going to use a clean one just to show you. And again, holding this down really tight, and I have to push really hard. I have to kind of use my hip here to push it down. Now you can see I can go across a different direction, kind of to get a cool, almost a tie-dye pattern. Now I'm working with kind of a mixed ink, which is fine. You'll get some kind of experimental things happening, which is kind of fun as well. Cool. All right. That came out great. Look at that with the tie-dye. That's pretty awesome. All right, I'm going to do one more on another surface here. I got this kind of magazine page, and now I've got ink everywhere. All you need to do is just kind of get it in a direction of where you want it to go. This is very messy. You can see lots and lots of mess. So be prepared for the mess. All right, now I'm going to do this. And I'm going to just push really hard, kind of holding my screen down because it's popping up on me. And then, nice, I'm getting even more interesting color combinations there as well. Have a place to kind of lay them to dry. Now, I am ready to print on another surface. I'm going to do that right away, kind of center that. The nice thing about the plexi is if you mess up, you can always wash it off and do it again. That's pretty sweet. So, okay. So I got that there. And I'm going to push really hard. And then I'm going to come from another direction. So I'm going to really make sure I get that push. If I release this pressure, it could not lay down sometimes in the same spot. So just be aware of that. All right, let's see how that looks. Oh, cool. It did shift a tiny bit right there, but I can always just scrape that off when it dries, which you can see a really cool print there as well. And then I'm going to print on the wood while I'm at it. So I have to have a big space to work. So be aware of that, okay? Now in this case, this is not up high enough. I'm actually going to remove this from here and just lay it right flat on there. So now, this is where I've got to be pretty good with my hands. I've got to kind of balance as much as possible without kind of shifting it at the same time. So I'm going to hold pretty tight here. I'm going to push down, spreading my fingers, and push down really hard. But I'm not going to go a second time hoping that that did it. So let's see how I did. It's getting a little dry. So something to be aware of. It is a little bit dry. So I'm starting at this point to say, you know what? I probably need to clean my screen out. See where it's starting to get a little dry. The ink is not pushing through the screen. So this is a sign to say, okay, stop. Let's clean the screen out. Let it dry. And then I'll show you next how to print the t-shirt. All right, I'll show you how to clean here in just a minute. Okay, everyone, I have all of my stuff. I have all my stuff here. So what I want to make sure that I do is see all my stuff really messy. I want to make sure that I save as much ink as possible. I'm using a big sink. I would suggest a kitchen sink if you have a utility sink, like in a laundry room, or use a bathtub. Bathtubs actually work great because it kind of contains everything and you can just scrub it out afterwards. I have a container that I'm going to try to save as much of my ink as possible. So this one, not much ink left. This one has a lot of ink on it, so I'm going to use my palette knife to scrape my ink into my container Since you have a limited amount of ink, try to save as much as possible. You can always use it later. And just kind of scoop and save as much as you can. Throw that in the sink. Palette knife here, scrape off whatever you can. And then on the screen, right here, you're going to scrape off as much as you can as well. So I'm putting it in here. As long as it's in a closed container with a lid, any kind of food container, salsa container, sour cream, yogurt, anything with a lid, it will stay for a long time. It will not dry out. But if you don't put it in a closed container, you run the risk of losing your ink. So I'm going to put the lid on there and save that for when I do my t-shirt project. Now, this is the messiest part of the whole thing. Be aware that there's a lot of splatter back, so be prepared with whatever you're wearing, that if it splatters back, you're not going to ruin your clothing. So I'm going to run my water, only cold, do not put hot on, only cold. The hot actually releases the sticker from the screen. So I'm going to start by just letting it soak a little bit while I'm washing my palette knife. Okay, palette knife, clean. And then I'm going to wash my squeegees off. Again, a lot of splatter back. So if you're working in a bathtub and stuff, put a towel down. You will get some splatter. It's just a very messy process. All right, so I'm just getting, especially on these grayers, they get kind of stuck in the grooves here. So I'm washing that off really well. All right, and then I've got one more here that I'm washing off. Well, the whole time I'm just letting that soak inside of here, okay? Just letting that soak, but I don't want to overly wet it or else the sticker will start to release. So just a warning on that. Okay, so those are all clean. Now I'm only rubbing on the inside of my frame, not the yellow, with a sponge. And I'm just kind of running it along there, getting rid of the extra ink. It's going to stain. Don't worry about the stain. Just get rid of all the actual ink. That's important. The actual ink is what makes it an issue. Okay, so check this out. I lost a piece, but I knew it was going to happen, so I saved it in my bathtub or my sink, and I can always stick it back on. You'll want to watch for this. This happens a lot when you're washing it. Just be aware that little pieces could get lost, could come off. You can always burnish it back on after the screen is dry. Notice, though, that there's no ink at all in my screen. I'm making sure that it's completely clean and there's no ink visible. I do have a little bit of extra ink here, which I can wash off with my sponge. And just make sure there's no visible ink. In here, there's some staining, but that's going to happen. That's normal. It's silkscreen. So the fabric ink wants to stay on the silkscreen, but otherwise, it's pretty clean overall. It's still quite messy. So I want to make sure that all this extra ink is gone, and then just let it dry over a bathtub or over like a rag or something like that. Try to avoid wiping it with anything because the sticker is really, really soft right now. It's going to want to move around. So you can see it's moving around a little bit here. So just be aware of that and make sure that the adhesive part gets adhered to the screen. All right, I'll show you how to do a silkscreen t-shirt next. Okay, everyone, I am going to show you how to print on your t-shirt as well as the cardboard with a different color. So one of the things I want to encourage you to do to prepare is to have everything ready if you're printing on multiple pieces of fabric. And also you need to put a piece of cardboard, a smooth piece of cardboard. Not this kind of cardboard, that's corrugated, it's too bumpy for putting in a t-shirt. Use the piece of cardboard I gave you in your actual kit. That's the best thing to use to smooth in here. Also, determine if you're going to print on the front or the back of your shirt or wherever in the location. If it's the front, make sure that there's about 4 fingers width before your design lays down so that the top of your design is about 4 fingers away from the curve of the neck. And then on the back, I would say at least a hand's width, where the back actually starts from where you put it here. Now, I'm using these clips again, and I'm just gonna push this up to make sure that I have it in the correct location. I'm gonna fold this down. I kind of folded this neatly so I have less of my t-shirt showing. That way there's not as much likelihood of me dripping on the t-shirt. So I'm gonna put this in here. And then if you have any extra scrap paper around, or you feel like you might drip, it's always a good idea to maybe cover your shirt with some extra paper. So I'm just going to use some newsprint. You can use newspaper. I'm just going to rip it here just a little bit and maybe lay it right here so I don't get any ink on the side there. And I'm going to do the same thing here as well. That way it's just protected. My shirt doesn't get anything on it. I still have that ability to push down. And now I'm going to show you how to use this ink here. Take the little cover off and then spread your ink out along here. You only need enough to run it one time across. So just put enough ink on there that it'll cover the whole thing. You can always put the ink back in the container if you don't use it, because you don't want to waste it. So put that to the side. And now I'm ready. I'm going to hold down really tightly. I'm pushing with my stomach to hold that down. I'm going to spread my fingers, and I'm going to push really, really hard. Now I noticed I have a little bit here that I didn't get any in there. So just make sure that you have indeed covered the entire thing. So I probably just need a little bit more ink. I'm just going to put it right there and kind of pull across sideways just to make sure I haven't moved anything. So everything's still in place. And I'm just going to push across this way just to double check that I have gotten that area as well. And there we go. So that is my t-shirt. Make sure your hands are clean before picking the t-shirt up. Here is my t-shirt, and that is my print. Now, while my ink is wet, I'm going to then show you a print on the cardboard, just to kind of use up some of my other ink, and to see what it looks like, because it's just another surface. You can always add paint, you can draw on these things, you can do whatever you'd like to kind of spruce these up. It's kind of fun to add additional elements to your prints. It makes them more unique. And you're going to have a lot of them, so you can kind of play around with them. Remember, you'll turn in 3 prints to me at the end of this project as your final print, so 3 total. Cool. And that's the one on just a piece of cardboard. Nice and smooth. Looks really good. Remember, don't leave your screen so that the ink dries in it. Always remember to clean it out pretty rapidly. Save any ink that you can by scraping it into the container. Because there's a lot of ink there that you can still use. Don't waste it. And then you have quite a bit of ink left over. You can get a lot of prints out of that. And then clean up, and you're ready to go. And then I'm going to show you how to iron your shirt so that it heat sets it into the fabric, because it is fabricating. There's also directions right here on how to do it written on the jar of the ink. All right. Okay, everyone, so I am going to show you how to take this and actually heat set it, because it's on fabric, so it doesn't kind of wash out. If you want it to look kind of distressed and wash out a little bit, then you just wash it. But basically, you take your cardboard out. This is completely dry. It takes about an hour to dry completely. Then you're going to flip the entire thing inside out, like so. And then from the back of it, so there's at least 2 layers of material. You've got the back and then the front material there. 2 layers of material. I have a hot iron here, and basically I'm just going to count to 30 or so, and just all the way across, good pressure. It's a really hot iron, so it's on high cotton, no water or steam, just back and forth, just making sure you're covering all of the surface. Keep it nice and flat. Now, if you're doing it on sweatshirt or denim, it won't work to just turn it inside out. Just put a pillowcase over top of it, so a thin layer. You can iron right on top of the pillowcase over top of the design. So anything as heavy as denim, a backpack, sweatshirt material, those would all be what you would do. All right, so once you go about 30 to 45 seconds up to a minute, then it's gonna be a little warm, be careful. It is all ready to go, and you have heat set your design on your shirt, and it's ready to wear and wash.